Hello and welcome back to the Overflow. I'm Andrea, joined by my dear friends Bronwyn and Becky. And today our topic, it might be a little bit controversial in that I think that the majority of doctors and naturopaths out there are going to disagree with what we talk about. But you will find a small subset who've really dug into the research who feel differently. Okay, so now that you're like, what are they going to talk about? It's vitamin D, also known as hormone D. And if you've been to a doctor, you probably have heard, hey, your vitamin D is low, you need to supplement. So we're just going to kind of dig into the whole vitamin D story today. Hopefully, you will leave with a little bit more knowledge, but also just a better understanding of what D is doing in the body and maybe a little bit of a different perspective. But I need to preface it by saying this, we are not doctors. All right. We are just three women who love to learn and to support other women on their journeys. And so we are not diagnosing, prescribing, treating. We're not telling you to stop your vitamin D supplementation if that's something that you feel strongly about. So
Always
here we go.
consult your medical professional.
Absolutely. Very good. All right. So where do we want to start here? Ladies.
I think what if we just start with by talking about how the body makes vitamin D? Because I think that's just an important component to know that sunlight and light signaling, which Bronwyn and I talked some about in the last episode, light signaling is huge when it comes to making vitamin D in the body. So sunlight hits your skin, right? And then your skin creates vitamin D with that sunlight, also using nutrients like magnesium. And so that UVB,
And
and it's that
also
UVB. Go ahead.
also cholesterol.
Yeah.
So, when we're in a place where cholesterol has been demonized and many people are on statins, and so their cholesterol is actually under threat and lowered. And so it's the cholesterol in your skin that is the substrate that turns into vitamin D. So, there's multiple places in this whole conversation where something could be going awry, right? But the cholesterol in the skin, and it takes actually hours for that to happen. So I've heard it said like you should really be exposed to sunlight and then don't go shower right afterward, because actually the cholesterol on the surface of your skin is creating the sunlight or it's creating the vitamin D and it's sinking in. And so you don't want to just scrub it off. So it's not like, I mean, it sounds weird, like don't wash the sun off your skin, but there is that factor. So I'm sorry I interrupted, but wanted to,
Well, no, I'm
I just
glad you
thought of
brought that
that.
up because I think, yeah, cholesterol is very demonized. And that is one of the main components in creating vitamin D in the body. That and then magnesium is a huge cofactor. So I think we need to remember that maybe even, I mean, and I don't like maybe even when body's even high in cholesterol, like we need to go get more sunlight, right? Like we need to make some of those conversions from getting in the sun, getting that light signaling, making sure we have enough magnesium. There's a lot of enzymes involved in this process too. And I think another thing that we want to talk about today is that when you go to the doctor and you get a test for vitamin D, they're testing a storage form of vitamin D and they're testing one metabolite. And there's many metabolites that could be tested for vitamin D. And just those metabolites aren't really, weighed against these, like looked at when we're getting these blood tests. So I think that's a really important thing to talk about too, is like the storage vitamin D that's usually tested, but there's so much more.
So yeah, so let's get to that, but let's go back for just a second to the being out in the sunlight. Okay, so I did an interesting thing before we got on this call, and I was like, I am curious because I know being from Arizona, right? We are in the sun all of the yeah, like
You'll get
360,
the sun.
360 days a year of sun or something like that. I think it's 350 days a year of sunshine, which is a very different story for you, Bronwyn. But both of you are
I'm
further
in
north.
Washington State.
Yeah, in Washington State. Both of you
Right. I'm in
are
Washington State.
north. And so I looked at what my UV index is because to make vitamin D, it needs to at least be a 3. right? So the UV index needs to be 3 or higher. So I was looking for us, like here in Waddell, Arizona, we get to 3 today at like between 12 and 1 or 1 or 2, 1 and 2, I can't remember. But we do get barely to 3. You, Bronwyn, only get to like 1 today, and I think you got to like 1.7 today, Becky, in St. Louis. So, and this may be a conversation, we may park this for now and come back and do another episode on, well, okay, so what happens in the winter, right? Like, and talk about melatonin versus vitamin D and the just the innate wisdom in the creation of our body that it's okay. Like, y'all don't need to stress that your UV index isn't getting to a 3 and you're not making a lot of vitamin D today because you can get that other times of the year and store it up. So just wanted to say that. The other thing I want to say about being outside is it's really important for us to be aware of how long we can be out before we get burned. And it's really dependent on your Fitzpatrick score, which is kind of based off of like your ancestry and how, how light your skin is and if you burn easily versus tan easily and all of those things. But you really, to get the vitamin D absorption, you really need to go out without sunscreen on your skin. If you are covering yourself up, slathering up, you're not going to get the right level of vitamin D absorption because it's a block, right? So just wanted to put that out there. Okay, so if we move forward to the conversation about what they are testing, why is this problematic that they're looking at 25D as the only thing when they're testing vitamin D levels?
Well, there's the 25D and then there's the 1 comma 25D, which are two different tests. The 1 comma 25 is the active form. So that's what we really should be testing. It's a more expensive test. And so doctors tend to not call for that, which is understandable. I mean, I understand a doctor not wanting to just test for everything under the sun, like a standard. So it's become standard to just test for the storage form and then base recommendations off of that. And what's really interesting about that, so it does tell us something. The storage form does tell us something. The normal range used to be years ago, like decades ago, 15 to 30. Okay. And then over time, they changed that to be 20 to 30 because they felt like, well, people are probably, they're really healthier between 20 and 30. And then now the normal range is 30 to 65 in many labs. It's a little bit varies. And some labs are like 30 to 85. So the range has gone up significantly. This is storage form we're talking about. So the body's not using this. This is kind of like what it's stored up and it needs to convert over to the active form. But what's tricky is if you just test for storage form. So think of it this way. When you get sick, your body will take your wise working body. I got the flu. My body took my storage D, say it was at 28, right? It converted some of that into active form and put it to use in my immune system. So if we went and tested my active form rose, and then my storage form is going to drop. Maybe now it's at 21, right? Because I actually used it. Put it over into the active form, began stimulating my immune system with that. So if we go and test our storage form and say like, oh, that's low, we've got to supplement and add more in, but we never tested the other, then we could have both be high. So if you think of it like, one is like your savings account, one is your checking account. So you're moving money around. That's maybe a bad analogy. I don't know, because who would deny having more money deposited in both accounts, right? But we don't want to have both accounts be so high that we get to a place of excess. So we're going to talk for a bit about, in a minute about what it's like to be at excess. But the story here is that when our doctors test us for the one and not the other, we don't get the full picture. And so we're told that we're low, but we're actually going off of the new numbers. The numbers have changed because the populace is being exposed to synthetic vitamin D on a mass level. We're getting it in our milk. We're getting it in our supplements. We're getting it like so many different supplements have it. So when a person decides when a person recognizes they've been overexposed and goes to avoid it, it's actually a lot of work to check all your supplements and be like, oh my goodness, this energy drink has it. This vitamin has it. This dairy product has it.
I
and to
think
begin
that's what's
avoiding it
crazy though.
is actually really eye-opening.
Yeah, that it's eye-opening that it's
Yeah,
like so many things and you're getting way more vitamin D than you think, and then you go to the doctor and you're still low.
And you're still low. And I think that
right,
that is part of the innate wisdom of the body, right? Like
right,
we're trying to force something up that does not want to go up.
Yeah,
right.
I remember, this was probably a decade ago, and I was seeing a naturopath, and of course, oh, your vitamin D is low. We really like to see your vitamin D at like 80. So I
Yeah.
was supplementing, I think like 5,000 IUs for I don't months. And the next time I went in, like it moved up a bit, but not very much.
yeah. But and I think that's the other
Because
thing, that
it was,
whole range that's so like subjective,
Mhm.
like
yeah.
that it moved so much and it's like it seems out of whack because it's like, is it really describing the state that you're in?
Well, and it's like we're trying to do addition here, like, oh, just okay, it's low. Let's just add, this vitamin D supplement and it's going to go up. But like, it's so much more complex in how it's being used in the body, and it's more like algebra, and it's a
Yeah.
big equation. It's not just like add this and that number is going to go up, and that's better that that number goes up. This was interesting. There was a study. I cannot remember who did the study, but they found. Okay, so this is interesting. So. Um, in disease states, okay, usually vitamin D is low. Okay, so if you have a lot of inflammation and stuff going on in your body, typically vitamin D is gonna, we're talking about the storage form of vitamin D is gonna be low. But if you tested the 125 D, okay, your active form, it's gonna be high, like higher than it should be when there's a lot of inflammation things going on because the body is, trying to deal with this. But here's what's interesting. Okay, so if you're in a disease state, low. But also, they found that if you look at all cause mortality, there was no benefit over a level of 21 on the storage form of vitamin D.
Right.
And so you've got both. You've got like, oh, disease states are low, all cause mortality, no benefit over 21, which would be considered low. So it's really looking at, it's not causation. It's not like the low vitamin D is causing your illness. It's that, hey, your body is using active D. It's taking some of that substrate, turning it into an active form to be able to fight whatever is going on, right? And so we're looking at, I think is Morley Robbins who always talked about like a fly, if there's garbage, you're always going to see flies around, right? Do the flies cause the garbage? No, right? Or like there's a fire and there's always firefighters around at the fire. Did the firefighters cause the fire? No. So low vitamin D is not the cause of whatever these disease states are, but it is going to be low if there's a disease state going on. So what we really need to focus on is over here, how do we put out this fire?
Right.
Right?
Well, and this is what I feel like is something that's really good to be just knowledgeable and understanding about, is that when we look at something like a low vitamin D and we say you have to go take more vitamin D, that's a very Western medical mindset, even with a vitamin. And that's made its way into even our holistic health practitioners, holistic circles. And I think people need to recognize that whenever there's something that's low and we're just trying to feed that vitamin, that we're still not looking at it as a whole picture of everything that's going on. And I feel like that's so problematic because then we're like, oh, my vitamin D is low. I have to take all this vitamin D. Well, there's actually a lot more happening in that picture. And here we're just feeding ourselves with vitamin D, which actually, right, like may not be the reason for like it's not the reason for the fire, most likely. So it's not going to fix it either.
Right. Yeah.
So
So,
Well,
I think it's
I
rare for people to understand that.
Brian, when you
I
were
think
saying that you had an experience, I mean, you've been on high dosing vitamin D before. Was that also recommended by your naturopath?
yeah,
What was your season of?
I've had integrative doctors about like what you said, 5,000 a day. I've had an integrative doctor tell me do like 50,000 once a month or 100,000 once a month. And the reality is that this is a fat soluble vitamin, so it's not like we have to do it the same amount every day. That's another thing that's good to realize. Our body is made to increase this in the summer when we have more sun, or maybe, Andrea, for you, if you may be having more sun in the winter because you can't go outside in the summertime, it's too hot.
Right.
But we have this like, storage that happens when we have sun exposure, and then we don't just like lose it by the next day. We have it actually potentially for months. And so when someone does become vitamin D toxic, and we've all had nutritional therapy clients who are vitamin D toxic, we'll talk about that in a minute. It takes months actually to clear that. And so if someone stops taking it and feels like, okay, am I going to be just deficient next week? No, because it's fat soluble. So it's going to go into your tissues, go into your fat cells, and be stored to some degree over time. I think it's interesting that, yeah, so I was prescribed that at different times. So I've done different therapies like that for, I don't know, I think I've done even like 2 to 5,000 for months and months and months on end, maybe even years, several years ago. Before I dug into this, I did not see it like curing everything for me. It wasn't like I came out of all the issues I was going in for. It was just sort of like, well, we did a test, you're low, this is a good thing. And not really, I did not see the correlation. What I did see correlation as far as healing adrenals, healing thyroid, healing allergies and depression, like many things, was getting my minerals in balance, my copper. Anemia did not heal until I got my minerals in balance. And these fat soluble vitamins are catalysts for our minerals. So you think of minerals are not fat soluble, they're not even water soluble, but they're carried in water. There's these complex relationships. Vitamin D has a relationship with vitamin D has a relationship with calcium. This is where you're talking about, it's a little bit complex, like algebra. Calcium and magnesium have a relationship, and then they can be blocking movement of things like iron and copper. So what vitamin D does, it's going to pull calcium into the bloodstream. So we need to have our vitamin D present so that we can pull copper from our gut into our bloodstream. Like we need to be absorbing calcium from our foods every day. But our body has like the brilliant MO on this. Like it already has the ability to sense in elegant feedback loops when we have copper that's low, or calcium that's low, calcium that's high. And so the gut is responding minute by minute to what our body needs, electrolyte wise, bone density wise, and then vitamin D is helping to catalyze that. If we just insert more vitamin D in there, then it may be forced. It's a hormone, right? So it's forcing the body to absorb more calcium into the bloodstream. Now, more calcium in the bloodstream does not mean that we have better bones. We just have calcium in our bloodstream. What is the vitamin that puts calcium into bones? Vitamin K. And so one positive thing that I have seen in the last few years is this kind of shift to, instead of just vitamin D, now it's K2 vitamin D or K2D3. So doctors are kind of realizing, oh, we need to be, supporting both K and D. That's a good step forward, but our body already was doing fine on the vitamin D, because vitamin D was not intended to be taken like as a supplement. We're not really intended to get all of our vitamin D, or even most of it, through ingesting. There's very few foods that even have vitamin D. So you think, like, were we created to eat our vitamin D? Nope. We were created to make our vitamin D from sunshine and store it for the winter.
And so it feels like vitamin D has really only entered the conversation in a big way because we are so out of tune, right? With like circadian rhythm and, in front of computers all day, inside under artificial lights all day, and not out exposing ourselves. But so I wanted to say, so keep going. And then I want to add something
because we can make it synthetically. And because we can make it synthetically, right?
Right.
So now we have this synthetic ability to increase it. And so the reason that the testing range has gone from 20 to 30 as being normal to being 30 to 65 is because the populace is under the influence of synthetic vitamin D. If nobody was taking synthetic vitamin D, that would not be where the average is. Do we see a healthy population under the influence of all this vitamin D, synthetic vitamin D? No, we don't see that we're all healthier because of
And
that. We're
that would
just
skew
constantly
all
told
your
that we're,
studies,
what was that?
if that would skew all your studies.
Keep
All
going.
your,
Yeah.
like if you're taking a study of a population, you're going to get their vitamin D baseline before you go and start testing their vitamin D levels, right? If you're giving them like whether it be testing them for disease or, when you're taking a group in a population and you're doing a study on them, you're going to look at all those baselines, right? So that was, I mean, essentially that would skew all your studies. Having a populace that's mostly charged up with vitamin D because it's in
Totally.
our milk. It's not even like they're taking it. Maybe they're not even taking it as a supplement because it's in their milk and their dairy products and everything that half the stuff that they drink. So you can't really even do like a valid study on it, really, with that kind of population. If you know,
No, and yeah, and you think about all of the things. So not only is it impacting our calcium levels, like which can mean pulling from bones, right? So if we're supplementing high dose supplementing D, um, and that calcium is coming out of bones, now we have an issue. We think of like vitamin D supporting bone health, but it really can be the opposite at those high levels for a long extended time. The other things, it causes potassium wasting in the kidneys. Our D is converted in the kidneys. High dosing of that vitamin D can cause potassium wasting. And that's one thing that I saw on my hair tissue mineral analysis. And I see it on clients' hair tissue and mineral analysis when they are supplementing with vitamin D was after, I had been supplementing for, it was probably a year, maybe more, maybe it was 2 years. I don't know. It was a while. And every time I went in, it was barely, above where I had started, which was crazy to me. Um, but my potassium was
yeah.
super low,
Well, and your
right?
potassium's a major like energy mineral. You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, keep going.
it's needed for so many reaction like just things going on in the body and it's one of those high needed minerals for energy in the cells.
Mhm.
And we're tanking it with high dosing.
Yeah,
I
I mean
mean,
essentially we're taking it. And so one thing though is I'm curious what you all think about this because I had someone come to me and I was having this conversation about vitamin D. I'm always the one that's a little different. And they were like, well, I have asthma. And when I started taking vitamin D, it really helped my asthma. Like, what are y'all's thoughts on when people do say they start feeling better on it?
well, it is a steroid hormone,
Right.
right? So there is going to be some benefit to it because it's going to give that feeling of relief. Um,
It's
but it's
suppressing
not getting to the root. Yeah.
it's suppressing inflammation, but that isn't what vitamin D is supposed to do. We're not supposed to have vitamin D so high that it suppresses inflammation, but it will do that. It's like we don't want your cortisol so high that it suppresses inflammation. But in a body where there is a lot of inflammation, your body might push up cortisol a bit, right? But then if you just take lots of extra hydrocortisone and prednisone to suppress that inflammation, and then say, well, I feel better because I don't have as much. Well, yeah, but if you do that long term, what is your health outcome going to be? That's not healthy. You need to get to actually the root of the inflammation and remove that instead of relying on this. It's not a band-aid. It's really like a mask, right? Is you're trying to mask the inflammation by supplementing vitamin D.
Right. Well, and so they call it your VDR. It's your vitamin D receptor. So we all have these receptor sites where our, minerals, those receptor sites that grab all your minerals or your vitamin D or whatever. So we have those receptor sites. And I've heard a lot of, some vitamin D researchers that talk about it often talk about how the synthetic D really clogs up those receptor sites. So I think that's an interesting concept too, that when we're thinking about the things that when we can actually absorb certain minerals and that we need those receptor sites clear so that they can be absorbed properly in the body, like our natural vitamin D made by our body can, is totally designed to go on that receptor site. But that our synthetic receptor sites, like those synthetics, are probably kind of like jamming up that
Well,
electrical
and I know
system.
that in the case of vitamin A, because they can kind of be the receptor sites can be kind of be competing with vitamin D and A, like needs both, right? Like the body once again knows how to manage and handle this, but when we're supplementing with high doses of vitamin D, it's it's making our retinol, our vitamin A, go down. And that's key because our vitamin A is needed to make copper bioactive in our bodies so that it can regulate iron. And so now we don't have that happening. And so iron is going up in our body. You guys see how all of these things are going in different directions based off of this one supplement? So now iron is going up, which is super inflammatory.
Mhm.
Um, Pathogens love to feast on iron.
No, it's
So
like
now,
oxidative stress is the number one thing that causes disease. I mean, it is the main thing that causes disease is oxidative stress.
Mhm.
and now
Iron.
you've got magnesium, right? So we got
Yeah.
oxidative stress going up. Magnesium is going down just because of the overall stress. And if you're just living life, even without this scenario of the vitamin D, you're just living your normal life. Most of us are low in magnesium anyway, because we're living like modern stressed lives. So now you got really low magnesium, which is needed to actually make the vitamin D do what it's supposed to do. But you don't have enough of it, but you're forcing all of this vitamin D into the system. It's kind of crazy when you think of all of like the cascades of what can happen with that high dosing.
Yeah. So, do you know there's one thing that I know of, just the one thing that I know of that can actually help your vitamin D receptors to like
Is
kind of
rosemary?
ungunk them? Huh?
Is it rosemary?
Yeah, rosemary.
Tell us about this because I've heard that, but I don't know a lot
Well,
about
so the
this.
component in it is carnosic acid. Carnosic acid is what's been studied that kind of like gets into those vitamin D receptors to kind of like, I don't know, you could call it cleansing. I call it cleansing. But what it really does is it helps enable that signaling. And it's in rosemary. And so it's interesting because some of these cultures that have been studied that live like a long time, they have tons of rosemary in their diet. They also have a lot of sunlight and like a lot of hanging out with people and like low stress
Talking about Italy,
environments.
like, should we just all move to
Italy.
Italy?
Let's all move to
Yeah.
Italy. I'm down. Let's do it.
But they
I
have
think that,
all this rosemary in their diet and like it's so good for that vitamin D. So it was interesting because I was talking to another friend of mine. She goes, "Oh yeah, my kids are low in vitamin D, but they've been really like she said something like her kids are pretty intuitive. She's like they've been like craving rosemary."
Interesting.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, so maybe most of us just need a lot more sunlight, a lot more, lower stress lives, and like a lot of rosemary in our diet.
It's funny. I mean, random, but my husband, like every night, Andy, he'll put on like 5 oils. He's the most routine like human on the planet. But he has 5 oils that he puts on like in sequence every night as he's like sitting on the side of the bed, getting ready to like lay down and go to sleep. And one of them is rosemary. And every time like I smell the rosemary, I'm just like I don't know. It's like I'm just wanting the rosemary in particular.
It enhances
so
brain
here's a question.
activity. It does so much stuff. Like it's so good.
I
So
know.
question here, does rosemary essential oil have the carcinic, is it carcinic acid?
Yeah, I don't know if the rosemary essential oil has that in it though. I'd have to
I don't
look.
either. I remember hearing that. I was like, I wonder if the oil would work if it has like the right constituents, just
Yeah.
in that part of the plant.
Yeah,
Well, and
I don't know.
sometimes the essential oils are more like an information download. Even if it's not the actual molecule, it's just like the instructions. And so
Mhm.
sometimes we might even have the molecules we need, but we just need the instructions like, yeah, go ahead and do that. Oh, yeah. And
Mhm.
our body just takes care of
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, I
Sometimes.
Yeah,
mean, I know rosemary essential oil is great for your immune system.
right.
Hmm.
So
It's
Yeah, it's part of the
definitely,
thieves blend.
yeah, definitely not going to hurt. I just,
So
I
good
didn't
for
know if it has
brain
that studied
function too.
carcinic acid or carnosic acid. That's how you say it in it.
Okay.
I want to circle back to that what you were talking about, Andrea, with the all the different molecules like iron up and down. And if someone heard what you said iron is rising in the body and they think like, oh, well, that's not my problem because my doctor's always telling me my iron's low and I'm anemic. And so I'm always taking iron to try and get it up. It needs its own podcast too, but
We will do a podcast on that for sure.
yes, on anemia. And I was anemic for years and told my iron was low and did not know that my iron was high in my tissues and I was anemic, severely anemic. The more iron I took, the more anemic I got, right? And here I'm taking vitamin D, taking iron, and yet don't know that these are building in places in my body which we are not testing for. So that's one thing just to remember here. Like when we mentioned have your doctor take both vitamin D tests, there's multiple kinds of tests that are not being taken or maybe aren't even available, but you're not seeing where some of these molecules are. So if you're saying, yeah, my iron is actually low, so that's not my problem. No, very likely your iron is high somewhere else in your body. It's high in your bone or high in your liver, and it's just not high in your blood because there's not space for that. Perhaps because of a dysregulation with vitamin D, vitamin A, copper, all these molecules work together. It's a symphony. It's not just a bucket we throw things in. Our body is elegantly orchestrating all of it.
And while I think there's a time and a place for blood testing, I think it's interesting when you think about where a lot of these minerals are moving, that they probably are still in your body, but they may be in your tissues. And
Yeah.
so nobody's doing, regular biopsies of tissues or anything like that. And so I think it's interesting just to think like it comes down to just understanding like, okay, a blood test may tell me this, but it still will not
Not a
give me the
complete
whole
picture.
picture.
No.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the body is sequestering the iron because of pathogens, right? To keep once again in its innate wisdom. I don't know how many times we can say that in this episode, but it's true. Okay,
Okay, so
so
I also want to ask one thing. Like we've talked about like synthetic vitamin D, and probably our listeners many of them will be aware that there's like D2 and D3, but both of those actually synthetically made are still what we're referring to as vitamin D. The D3 is more usable. Like it will make the 25D test go up and the D2 won't. It's just kind of junk something, more junk to clog up the works. But so don't, D2 is not even what we're talking about. But I want to talk about like if someone says, well, okay, but I'm going to get a really good source of like natural vitamin D because it's made from mushrooms, but I just want to take it at high dose because I live in Washington. Like, I live in Washington. So isn't that okay? Like, I just want to take a natural dose, but still take a high dose. What would you say to someone like that? I mean, I'm thinking we need to circle back to like, okay, there's a balance here on our vitamin A and D, and we don't ever see in nature a food where there's just high amounts of D, but no. The only really, the only real source of natural vitamin D is cod liver oil. And with cod liver oil, you're getting 10 times the amount of retinol, that's vitamin A, as vitamin D. So that kind of tells us like, and in our body, if we're doing blood tests, which again is limited, we'd want to see vitamin A at twice the amount as vitamin D to be able to catalyze these minerals properly. And
Well, and I
and
think
yet,
that's the problem too. Even if you're taking it in a mushroom form, like you're getting a dysregulated ratio with A to D.
Mhm.
And nobody talks about like that's really hard to find. You don't hear about that a lot, how important this ratio is because it is found in nature like that. If you're going to eat fish or something that has natural vitamin D in it, it has this natural vitamin A to D ratio in it.
Mhm.
So here we're loading up on all this vitamin D, and it's like we're becoming very imbalanced, which we were when we started out, but we're becoming even more imbalanced, pushing our body to even more imbalanced state because of this idea that, oh my gosh, my vitamin D is low.
Mhm.
right.
Like just looking at that number that I have to bring it up instead of looking at a whole picture.
So if somebody is wanting to do something, they feel like UV index is low, like I want to make sure my immune system is supported through the winter. Cod liver oil, I think is what all three of us would probably say. If you're going to take something, take that whole food supplement that has everything in the right ratios and still get outside. Still get outside. because there's other things going on. Melatonin in the winter time is going to be what's going to help you with immune system support. So you're getting with that UVA, with the morning sun, you're getting melatonin support for the nighttime, for sleep. And we know what happens during sleep, right? All of the repair mechanisms, our body goes into like cleanup mode. And so we still want to get outside, even if we're not getting like exposure that's going to be making vitamin D. You have to trust that the other parts of the year when you were making vitamin D, you have stores. And so it's natural for your vitamin D levels to be lower in the winter months. It's supposed to be that way. We were designed that way for it to be lower. Talk to me, because once again, being in Arizona, I have a red light mask, but I don't really feel much of a need to have red light therapy to support me through the winter months or anything. But do either of you use, like any extra support like that during the winter months?
I use a red light panel all year around. And I just know, I mean, we could probably do another like a whole episode on
We
just red
totally
light
could.
therapy, but I know that it's also, light and it's great for your cells, and red light, is a certain frequency that's just very helpful for just cellular activation. But I don't think about it a lot. Like I literally like I can plug it in and put it outside my shower. And so I always take red light showers.
Do you really? Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I always do because I don't like, I saw some Instagram or something talking about like dark showers the other day, like getting just like kind of the calming and not having the bright like blue light on when you're in the shower. And so I for a while I was just taking kind of like dark showers. I didn't even see anybody say that. I was just like, I don't want this synthetic light, right? So I started just like, I was like, well, I can just plug in my red light panel and then I'll get like full exposure to red light. And so that's what I literally do that every time I take a shower.
I love it.
So it's
Bronwyn,
not like a
are you using
seasonal
red
thing.
light?
Yeah, I have a red light panel that I love. It's hanging in my closet. So it's a panel, and it's from Sauna Space because theirs is like zero EMF. They sell it like with a canvas tent, and the whole getup is really expensive. But I made my own canvas tent a while ago, and then realized like I don't need a tent at all because they're just taking up half of my closet. So I just have it hanging on my wall, and I have a little stool in front of it. And then I took the tent down and got rid of it. So I will just sit there, and I definitely feel like I use it way more like daily in the 6 months of the year that I don't have as much sun here in Washington State. In the
Mhm.
summer, I'm just busier, it's lighter, I'm not craving it, and it's a heating element too. It gets hot. Like there's four large red lights under metal cages because I think their surface gets to like 500 degrees or something. So you definitely would not want to touch them. And it's hot, so when I feel cold, I feel like it's a way for me to warm up. My routine has been to my alarm goes off, I go and flip that on, and it's like a way I can wake up easy. That's like at 6:30 in the morning. Right now, it's not getting light around here until 7:30 in the morning because I'm so far north. In the summertime, it gets light at like 5 a.m. So like there's just these extremes that I live under being far north. Anyone in Canada is going to deal with this as well, right? Where you have these extremes of both summer and winter. I do feel like it's helpful to me. I just recently read someone saying that really you shouldn't be doing red light outside of when it's light outside. So now
Right,
I'm
not good
conf
to do it at night.
yeah, now I'm conflicted because I'm like, oh, because I'm never gonna go sit there at like lunchtime. It's always like waking up and then like at night before I go to bed, I'm like, oh, that sounds so warm and cozy. But I am trying to stop doing it at night because I think it is stimulating and I don't want to be stimulated before trying to go to sleep. So
Yeah, I was gonna say it's
I'm,
probably, I mean, if you're gonna like err on one side, it's probably better to do it in the morning, even right before the sun is out, versus
yeah,
doing it at night when the sun is down.
yeah.
I wanted to look, there is an app. Well, there's a D-Minder app. We won't really go into it, but you can download the D-Minder app and kind of check it out. That kind of tells you like based off of all your stuff, like how long to stay out in the sun, how much vitamin D you're making, etc. But there is another app, My Circadian, that tells you when the sun comes up. Because I feel like even being as far south as I am, um, yeah. So sunrise for us right now is 7:26 a.m. too.
Oh,
Yeah. So interesting. And we do have. some good UVB still at between 11 and 1:45 is what this is saying.
The sun is going down at like 4 p.m. here. So it's like my day is so short.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
like
So
dark
yeah,
here
we
before
don't
5 p.m.
have sunset until 5:23 right
Okay.
now.
Well,
Interesting.
your day isn't that much longer, but the
But the
angle of
UV
the sun,
index is, yeah, is just higher.
and
Um,
you probably feel
okay.
like walking outside, and I don't.
This is like we live for this time of year. It's so beautiful during the day. I'm just like, oh, it's perfect. It's so perfect. Um, okay, so let's walk people out. So, to summarize, when do you want to kind of give like a quick summary of all of the directions we've just gone in? Like, what are people to do with this information?
I would say be careful. Just be careful. I think one thing is that people have detached themselves from their intuition. And we get these blood tests back and we get all this fear mongering and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you have to take all this vitamin D." And I think we need to check back in because I feel like a lot of times we actually really do know what we need. So maybe there are some people that need some, but I would recommend taking it in the form of a food or cod liver oil. And I would also be really cautious of what you're eating every day, like milk or whatever you're buying from the store that might have it already added in. Because I don't think that's helpful for you or your body because who knows where that's really coming from either and how high quality it is.
Mhm.
And I know that there's two conditions where even if they test the active D, it's still going to be low. I know it's chronic kidney disease, and I cannot remember what the second condition is right now. So there's always caveats to everything, right? Always caveats to everything. But I would challenge you if you're like concerned about that storage D form to see if you can get the active form tested. Now I know one thing I do know is that the half-life is pretty short. And so I don't know like how accurate readings will be, but I know that our active D is supposed to be two to 2.5 times what our storage D is. So most likely, if you're in a healthy state and your active D is at 20 or 30, your storage D is 20 or 30, your active D is probably going to be somewhere between 40 to 70, somewhere in that range, right? But if it's way high, that's because your immune system is at work. There's some chronic thing going on that it's working on. And so then it's like, okay, so let's back up and what can I do to be supporting my body overall? What are the things that need to change in my lifestyle, in my eating, in my stress levels, all of those things so that we can fully support the body instead of relying on a synthetic substance that maybe is doing more harm than good.
Yeah, for
All
sure.
right. Well, thanks for this conversation. Let us know what questions y'all have. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram. We're happy to chat more, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.
Bye.